All right, guys, long time no see. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Just kidding. Anyways, we're going to be looking at Japan's relationship with Europe. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a little bit of Germany and Italy and what that looks like. Um, and then a little bit of the British part. All right. So, anyways, as we all know, Japan eventually links up with Germany and Italy, Mussolini and Hitler, forming the Axis powers. Basically, Hitler's going out of his way to recognize Manchukuo, formerly known as Manchuria during this time, as a state. Italy and Germany signed the Pact of Steel, making them military allies. Um, and so then Japan later joins in 1940. So Italy and Germany do it in 1939, and then Japan comes in a little bit late and says, "Okay, I'm going to join you guys too." Hitler picked Japan as an ally because they were seen as powerful when they saw how they were expanding into China. So that helps answer a couple questions as to why exactly this random Asian country, they're not really random, but it's so far away from Europe, right? Well, that's because Hitler was pretty impressed with what Japan was doing in China because Hitler and Mussolini had those same aspirations in terms of expanding into the continent and growing their influence. Japan was doing the same thing. Hitler also believed that it would make trouble for the Soviet Union, and also not mentioned here, but also France. France is not friends with Germany, and you're going to see why exactly that is. Um, so outbreak of the war in Europe and its impact on Japan, Britain and French declared war on Germany, but Germany was able to quickly take over Poland. This is known as the Phony War. With the fall of France in 1940 against Germany, Japan saw this as an opportunity to expand. Remember, France had colonies and territories within the continent of Asia. So that means that if France fell in Europe and they're weak, can Japan take advantage of that? Absolutely, and they will, and they did. So they believe that this was the opportunity to continue to further expand into far east into Asia and regions even outside of China during that time as well. Um, this would allow them to not only put pressure on France, but put pressure on the British as well, because then they'd be able to close the supply route routines that they'd use through China, which again would further expose the British in Europe, which would help Germany as well. Again, Japan set their eyes into Indochina, which was controlled by France. They also wanted to take over the Dutch East Indies, which was, valuable in resources. Oil, rubber, tin, all those things that you need in order to kind of sustain your military. It's what was located in there. Pause if you still need to write notes. I'm moving on. All right, next part. So the outbreak of war in Europe and its impact on Japan, just continuing with looking at that. Kaneko returns as prime minister for Japan. He comes in a little bit more aggressive because he has members that he brings along with him that just kind of believe that if they were to align themselves with Germany, then other people would kind of respect them because, well, the United States doesn't want any war. And if they see that Japan is aligning itself with Germany, then the United States will just kind of chill out there for a second, right? And so that's how they wanted to be in that way of aggressiveness. Um, which would leave Japan, which would allow Japan to kind of do more things without really being worried about the United States. Because it's like, well, we can do this now because the United States is not really going to declare war on us because they see how aligned we are with Germany and Italy. Other foreign policies in the 1940s, including straightening ties with Germany and Italy, creating the new order in Asia. So just kind of bringing that up again and just kind of having that sphere of influence and co-prosperity within the continent of Asia, with Japan in the lead, of course, and then signing a non-aggression pact with the Soviets. We'll explain that in a little bit. Might be confusing. Why would they want to align themselves with the colonies? And you'll see. To take away the colonies controlled by the British, French, Dutch, and place them under Japanese control. Again, it's not because they just want this land just because, but because this land offers a lot of resources and opportunities for them to grow. And then lastly, they wanted to reach an agreement with Jiang in China in order to kind of achieve the new order within the region. All right, next section. So this next section is just basically more specifically Japan's relationship with the United States and the British. Um, so we have this tangent in today, and we're going to be looking at a movie, I think, that kind of looks at this perspective, at the perspective of the British in this sense. But a trading center in China, Tianjin was home to about 3,000 British citizens, right, within that region. On April 1939, a Japanese bank manager was murdered. 4 Chinese individuals were suspected of murdering him, and Japan basically was like, hey, you better hand those murderers over or else. And well, the British, who basically had influence and control within that region of China, they were kind of stuck on what to do. China was basically saying, no, don't do this. Like, don't listen to them. Whatever Japan does. Why is Japan having any influence and jurisdiction in our area? Um, but basically, Japan was basically said, all right, you're not going to listen to us. Guess what? We're going to start humiliating you guys. We're going to start like basically putting checkpoints throughout this region and strip searching anybody who travels through this area because we're going to be looking for the assassins. In order to avoid war, though, the British basically eventually caved in, or like, all right, here we go. Here are the suspects. So they ended up caving into the British, handing them over to them. This incident made it clear to the British that they needed the help from the United States because they had to bow down to the Japanese. And if they wanted to keep control of that area that in China, and they wanted to maintain their presence in China, they needed help from the United States, and bad. All right, here's the next part. Last slide. All right, so this incident basically just kind of further proved that the United States was going to still continue to be isolationist. The president did not really send any support, but instead he showed support by saying he would end the 1911 American-Japanese trade agreement. The impact of this announcement was that basically the British were able to kind of be a little bit more firm in how they would respond. They could resist Japan a little bit more when it came down to what's happening in China. Basically boosted Chinese morale. The Chinese were happy that the president of the United States did this. Not enough, but they were happy that there was something that happened for once. And then U.S. citizens highly approved of this because they saw it as a strong move against Japan without actually going to war against Japan. The U.S. also took action once they saw Japan sign the treaty with Germany and Italy, which we'll look at this treaty, this pact, in more detail up next. Basically moved its fleet to Pearl Harbor. That's the United States moved it to Pearl Harbor to be closer to them in the Pacific. Signed a Lend-Lease with Britain, and then end the sale of fuel and metal scraps with Japan, which again we'll look at more details about this later on. Other than that, that's all. Have a good day, guys.